And now coping mechanisms can be the opposite, and it can seemingly be healthy, but it's still not. So people can be obsessed with exercise or obsessed with nutrition or obsessed with something that they think, well, this is good for me. But if it comes from a void, it's still coping. And every coping mechanism is protective in the short term and harmful in the long term.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Our Core Things. Today my guest is Sonia Samtani. She is a clinical hypnotherapist and founder of All About You Wellness Center in Hong Kong. In this episode, we talk all about why self-worth is the crux of all emotional and physical health issues. And we also talk about how to fully process our emotions. I know that I gained a lot from this episode, and I hope that you will too. Especially the part about self-worth, I really resonated with because I know that all of us face self-worth issues day to day. And it's definitely a continued process to learn how to love ourselves more. So I hope that you'll gain a little bit from this episode and learn to love yourself more every single day. Hi, Sonia. Welcome to Our Core Things.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to be here, Claudia.
Yeah, I've heard many good things about you. Being in the Hong Kong wellness scene. So it's very exciting for me to be able to speak to you today. What I think a lot of women struggle with is self-worth. And I know that in your experience, the reason you became a hypnotherapist also was rooted in your low self-worth in your childhood and in your youth. So can you tell me about how that inspired you to become a hypnotherapist first? And then we can also talk about, of course, how hypnotherapy can help with self-worth.
Of course, of course. And self worth is one of my favorite topics because I believe that it's the crux of all issues. Like,
Mm.
if we valued ourselves and we felt a sense of self worth, then we would not have more than 50% of the issues that we have. So it all boils down to not feeling good enough. And of course, that is my journey as well. So when I was much younger, I was an overweight child and I was not confident. And I found it very difficult to even speak up. In one of my TEDx talks, I speak about an event where I went to McDonald's and I was so scared to order my meal that when I was in the front of the line, I froze and I couldn't even order a burger and fries because I was so scared. What if I say it wrong? What if I don't say it well? What if the people behind me start making fun of me? And so that stemmed from self judgment and the need for external validation. And so I then began to do a lot of introspection. And because I noticed, I'm like, why is it that I find something difficult and other people find it easy? Why is it that I'm looking and feeling different from the way that I notice other people are? And so in the beginning, I thought that, oh, we need to change something and let's change the outside. Let's lose some weight. Let's start behaving differently and maybe life will change. And it actually did to some extent. So the loss of the weight and the behavior did make me feel better. But then I realized later that it's only because other people were responding differently to me. And so I was still depending on other people. And if by mistake I got ignored, or if people treated me in a way that I perceived to be, well, they're not treating me so well, I went back to the same place as before. So even though the outside had changed, the inside hadn't changed. And when I began to notice that, I did some more introspection on what is all of this about. And then I realized that behavior comes from beliefs. And so whatever we're doing with our body is behavior. And whatever we're behaving like is because our belief systems are causing us to do that way. So if I'm binge eating, it's my belief system that's telling me I need food right now. I feel really uncomfortable because I feel alone, because I feel not good enough. And for me, while I was freezing, because deep inside I felt like I was less than other people and I felt like I needed to be more invisible, which then went back to something in childhood where I decided that I need to be out the way and I need to not be causing trouble and I need to be a good girl. So that would help my family better. And I had all of these belief systems of what it takes to be a good girl. And a lot of that involved me not presenting myself and putting myself forward and being invisible. But when I realized that that's a part of my belief systems, it just opened up so many doors. And so then I started understanding it. And in the beginning, I was tackling it through coaching and affirmations. And then I came across hypnotherapy. And what hypnotherapy does with regression is it goes back to where these beliefs stem from. What was the moment where I created those beliefs? And for me, it was like, let's say, 6 years old. And when I was 6 years old, I decided, oh, it's better for me to be invisible, and that would be helpful for my family. And that was, of course, me. It was nothing to do with them. And so when you go back and you realize that this is a younger version of you, making a conclusion due to the interpretation of that situation, you can actually view the same situation differently. You can reinterpret the situation, and so much changes. So then I got to release the emotions related to that conclusion, the energy of that conclusion itself, and then self worth changed so much for me. And the person who couldn't order a meal in McDonald's is now a public speaking coach. And I've spoken to an audience of thousands and thousands of people. So, yeah, I'm a big advocate of working with the subconscious mind, discovering belief systems, and being able to shift reality by shifting beliefs.
Yes. Wow, that is such an amazing story. And I really also resonate with what you just said about how sometimes when we want to increase our sense of self-worth, we'll start changing things on the outside, like whether it is doing certain things we think will get us validation, or whether it's working out a lot and losing a lot of weight and looking toned. Because I also definitely experienced that. And I also was not a person with a very, very high self worth in primary school and secondary school, and I was not sporty at all. And then in university and afterwards, I started doing a lot of sport, almost to make up for the fact that I didn't feel athletic and good enough. And then I became almost obsessed with it, and then I did it every single day, which is, I mean, it's good for my health too.
Mhm.
But I definitely think that that came from a lack of self worth, because there are certain situations where even though I like physically I'm a lot fitter, there are still situations where I still felt inadequate, and that was also when I decided to look a lot more into the subconscious, into hypnotherapy, and realize that it's an internal shift. It's not the external shift that matters.
Yeah, yeah. And I thank you so much for sharing that. I love that you brought that up and also what you did about it and like, became obsessed. And that is kind of what we call a coping mechanism, right? Because if people don't know how to deal and face their issues, then all we know to do is how to cope with it. And previously, like when I was growing up, coping mechanisms looked like escapism, like going into cigarettes and drugs and going out and distracting ourselves. And now coping mechanisms can be the opposite, and it can seemingly be healthy but it's still not. So people can be obsessed with exercise or obsessed with nutrition or obsessed with something that they think, well, this is good for me, but if it comes from a void, it's still coping. And every coping mechanism is protective in the short term and harmful in the long term.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. This is really interesting because it actually relates to um, what I now talk about, well, what I now call like as a more holistic version of sustainability. Because I write a lot about environmental sustainability. I also started to realize that sustainability really comes from yourself and starts from yourself first, and any type of obsessive thinking, any type of like compulsive behavior, that is definitely not sustainable for us and for our health. And using anything to fill in the void is not healthy. But a lot of people don't even have that awareness to begin with, that they're doing things to fill in the void. How do we become aware, like whether we're doing things because we genuinely want to do it, or we're doing things because we're trying to fill something?
Yeah, this is what I think conscious living is really about. It's to be conscious to why I'm doing what I'm doing rather than just going through the motions and doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
for everything. And this is what mindfulness is about. You're mindful to the environment, you're mindful to yourself, you're mindful to your actions, and you know why you're doing all that you're doing. And it doesn't come from overthinking, it just comes from understanding your intention. Like, I know the intention behind why I've chosen these clothes. I know the intention behind why I'm napping right now. I know the intention behind why I'm choosing to write this essay. I know the intention why I'm doing this podcast. So, if there is an intention that you are actively aware of, and not only aware of, you are deciding, you're creating that intention, that is living consciously. And when you're unaware of why you're doing what you're doing, it very well may come from a void, because you're not even sure, you're going through the motions. And when people are just going through the motions, it is usually habitual, and those habits can very well come from, well, there's a gap that's happening in my life and I want to fill it with something, and that's the void, right? So people overeat and then they realize later that they overate, or let me just order one more drink, or let me just go out and party and then I'm not going to even look at the time, and then later on, oops, why did I do what I did? And those kind of behaviors generally come from voids, because we're not aware of why I'm doing what I'm doing. We're not intending that. And something that we could do to become even more aware is just become very present to the morning and the night rituals that we have, or create a morning and a night ritual. So in the morning when you wake up, what is your intention for today? What do you want today to be about? Who do you want to be today in your interactions? What does your day look like? And if you're doing that in the morning and creating the day ahead of you, that is living with much more awareness. And it's so simple. And then at night before sleeping, review the day. And if you're reviewing the day, then you can see, well, which parts of the day do I feel aligned with? And which parts of the day do I feel not aligned with? And are there still emotions that are unprocessed? Am I still feeling angry about an interaction I had, or disappointed at a friend of mine? And if I am, can I release those emotions before sleeping? And once again, you're becoming aware of how your body is feeling, how your mind is feeling, and then start to live more consciously.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. I think processing emotions is such an important topic because I think I don't know, a lot of people don't really know how to do it, including myself. I think I'm still learning how to process my emotions because I'm a person that intellectualizes a lot of my emotions, and even when I say, "Oh, I'm trying to process it," I don't necessarily know that I actually am, instead of just that I'm thinking that I am. It's a learning curve. How do you help your clients with that?
Yeah, and this is such an important topic too, because if we don't process our emotions, they stay inside our bodies, right?
Mm,
And you can break emotion into the, very popular saying E dash motion, which means energy in motion. So
emotion,
what
yeah.
are emotions, right? They're energies that are moving, because motion means movement. And
Mm,
so the best way to think about emotions are to think about a wave, right? And a wave has a beginning, a peak, and it ends. And so when you're feeling an emotion, the only thing to actually do is to feel it fully and complete the feeling, right?
mm,
If somebody's feeling sad and you say, well, don't feel sad, or if someone's feeling angry and you go, oh, stop feeling angry, that's
mm,
not very helpful, because they're already feeling it. And if anything, that might make them more sad or more angry, or angry and sad plus guilty, or something, or frustrated about it, and then it piles it up. So by the time you're feeling an emotion, the only thing to do is to feel it fully. It's almost like welcome it.
mm,
Welcome it, allow it, feel it into your body, breathe into it. So if you're angry, okay, breathe into the anger. Be completely angry. And then the anger will move through, and then the anger has an end. And no, I'm not saying please blow up at people and start slapping people around. That's not what I mean by breathing into anger. It's about feeling it in your body. And as you're feeling it in your body, if your body wants to do something, that's okay too. You don't have to do it to another person. If you want to box a pillow, do that. If you want to shake, do that, because your body is going to show you where those emotions are. right?
Mm.
And anger is actually quite often stored in our arms. That's why if you're angry, you want to punch someone, because our emotions are felt in certain places in the body. And if you're sad, people hold their heart. Oh, I'm feeling sad. And the direction of sadness is kind of going inwards. And so when you breathe into sadness, maybe you breathe into that energy in your chest and you go into it and you take deep, deep breaths and you allow yourself. So it's actually really simple. It's about becoming present to that emotion, feeling it in your body, breathing into it, and just allowing yourself to take as many breaths as you need to until it feels like that emotion is naturally coming to an end.
Mm. Wow. Yes, I think, well, hearing you say it now, it all makes so much sense. Although I have to say, sometimes in the moment, it's not necessarily always easy. But it takes mindfulness. Like, it takes mindfulness to first be like, oh, I am angry. Let's feel it all and entirely, and let it move through me instead of just store it. Yeah, that was such a visual and clear description, um, and explanation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for you, like, you obviously know so many different modalities, and you have all these skills. Are there any emotions that you struggle to deal with, or are there, yeah, are there certain times where you think, oh, even these skills, techniques that I've learned, I find it difficult to apply to myself?
Yeah, I think what we also need to note, and for me especially, is that I'm not always going to get the opportunity to breathe through every emotion in the moment,
Yeah.
right? So knowing how to like put it aside in a box and then pick up that box later, that is a very useful skill.
Yes.
Because let's say something has happened and I'm feeling upset, and then I've got a client and I need to do a session, or I've got a gig and I need to lead a workshop. And so now what my body is wanting to do is just complete this angry experience. And I got to go and now be with a client or lead a workshop. So what do I do about that? That is something that challenged me in the past. And
Mm.
now in my mind, what I do is I do one sweeping deep breath and I actually contain that. I make space for that anger. And
Mm.
then before I sleep every night, in my
Mhm.
daily review, that's when I do the breathing into the emotions of the day. Because if I'm not doing it daily, then I'm basically piling it up inside my body. But
Yeah,
if I'm doing it daily, then it's kind of like house cleaning. So if you're cleaning your home well, that's
I love
great.
that.
Otherwise, you will need therapy, which I call pest control, right? Because it's going to accumulate, it's going to become more and more and more, and then you need more of an intervention to deal with that. So yeah,
Mm.
my challenge was before about like, given my busy schedule, giving what's going on, and of course I'm going to feel those emotions, what do I do with them?
Mhm.
And so learning the skill to acknowledge, understand, park, make sure that I pick it up, and then move through it. And sometimes people do ask me, oh, do I feel all of those emotions of anger, sadness? Of course I do. Being a
Oh.
therapist or being somebody in this field doesn't free you from primary emotions, which of course you're going to feel.
Mm, mm. Um, I was just reading a book about Zen wisdom yesterday, and it one of the activities that they suggest doing is similar to what you said, which is have a worry or anxiety list that you just keep with you throughout the day, and you write those things down, and then at the end of the day, just process those emotions. So it's like what you were saying about, we're all busy and we can't constantly in every moment process our emotions. So, like, having that, blocking out that time to do it at the end of the day, and having that list, and reviewing it is quite, I think, is quite important. Yeah.
Yes. And again, that's conscious, that's mindful living. And writing is also a great activity.
Mhm.
Right? And if you're writing by hand, it's a subconscious activity, like art.
Mhm.
So when you are doing art or handwriting, it's coming from the muscles, and these are ideomotor responses, which comes from the subconscious mind, which is why journaling is so powerful. So if you want to journal out those emotions, that's another way of processing as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for you, do you find that breathing it out is the most useful?
Breathing definitely is involved no matter what I do. So sometimes it's just breathing out on its own. But when it's anger, I actually do like punching it out.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
do-
I
you
do.
you, you box, right? I think I saw on your Instagram that you do some boxing.
Yes, I do. I've started to do that again recently with someone else. Otherwise, if I'm at home, I will take a cushion and I will punch it out.
Yeah.
And I feel this beautiful, sweet release after that.
In one of your previous podcasts, you were talking again about self-worth, and then you said that everybody has a flavor of not enough, and I thought that was really interesting. So I want to go into that a little bit. Um, as in, when you talk about a flavor of not enough, it's just sort of everybody has their own self-worth issues to deal with, right? And I'm just wondering what is your flavor of not enough right now? I mean, you're doing so well in your business, and you have helped so many people. You're a public speaking coach. Do you still have a flavor of not enoughness right now?
My childhood, not enough, was a lot to do with my body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that crops up every now and then. And oh, okay, the body is aging. So not youthful enough. Sometimes that comes up. Business wise, to do with my craft and with my clients, that's the
Mm-hmm.
time that I'm most in flow. I love speaking, I love connecting, I love moving people through their stuff. And I don't believe that I'm the rescuer because that would mean that I'm in a codependent relationship with my clients. I believe that they're doing their own work and I'm creating this facilitative environment. So that's lovely. The parts that I enjoy less is admin. And so when I'm doing the admin, I don't know enough sometimes comes in when I learn something new. And then my way of kind of dealing with that is face. So, yeah, I don't know enough about the auditing part or the accounting part. And before I had someone else do it, and now I'm doing it myself. So, I don't know enough was another thing that I was dealing with. And in the last year, that has come much more in front of my face because I'm doing more than I used to do in my business. And then it's like, okay, I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'm feeling like I don't know enough. Face this, be uncomfortable, and now learn one step at a time, one breath at a time, learn this.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I like that as well. I think part of it is also like resilience and facing certain things that we're afraid of.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and so we also like when we touched base earlier, we talked about manifestation, which is another big theme in in recent years. And I think that there's a lot of misunderstandings about it as well, about what we can or cannot manifest, and a lot of what manifestation is that it also comes from a lack of self-worth. Like certain people would want to
Mm.
manifest, I don't know, like money, a house, a car, and ultimately that also is linked to self-worth. Do you ever talk to your clients about manifestation during your sessions?
I do think that every client that comes to me for an individual session comes with an objective. And that objective is what they want. In other words, what I want to manifest. Right?
Mm-hmm.
What I want is this big question. Now, if you even think of the word want, right? Why do we want? Because we don't have, which means wanting comes from lack. Now, if wanting comes from lack, then unfortunately, when we're thinking about it, we often reinforce the lack. So I want more money because I don't have. And now that I think about wanting money, it makes me feel the lack. And when I think about the lack, it makes me feel small.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are not fully aware that when they're thinking about what they want, they're actually distancing themselves from what they want. And
Mm-hmm.
they feel even further because they're reinforcing how much they don't have it. And
Yeah.
so when we're looking at manifestation, we're looking at actually bridging the gap and getting people to vibrationally connect with what they want as a feeling. And
Mhm.
so if they want more money, well, okay, well, what does that represent and how would that make this person feel and what would be more possible? So the feeling could be abundant and then what? Then there's freedom and then what? And then there's security. Okay. So, can we breathe into those feelings? Because those are the missing resources. And money is the physical representation of that. So,
Mm,
can we actually go into those feelings and breathe into those feelings and realize that those feelings are available, that those feelings are not lacking. And when you are vibrationally tapped into it, then you can start to visualize the money and the things that you would like to have. And once you do visualize it from that place, we're less likely to get attached to it. Because when we're saying that I want because I don't have, then I'm not okay without it, is the underlying message. So I want a partner, I'm not okay without it. I want more money, I'm not okay without it. I want this house, I'm not okay without it.
mm,
And then that makes us attached. But
yeah.
if we are bringing that vibration into our bodies, and then we think about the partner or the home and everything, then the subconscious message is, I am
Mm,
enough with or without the physical form of this, because I
mm,
can connect to the energy of it. I am enough with or without that, which then helps us to release our attachment to the form.
mm.
So, with manifestation, it's important for us to not be clinging on to something, because the more we're holding on to something, the less likely we are to actually retain it.
That's just really philosophical as well. The more we hold on to something, the less likely we are to be able to let it go and then for it to come back. You know, like that's, I mean, that's also a huge, again, like, it is easy to understand, but sometimes not so easy to apply. Um,
It
and
takes work.
yeah, and I think something else that's I'm interested in is a lot of people say, "Oh, I want to manifest, say, I don't know, a dream partner." But like, what about the clarity part? Like, how do we really need to know the specific details, or say when we want a partner, when we want a new job? Like, the struggle is that, oh, I want a new job, but I don't know what it is. Like, I just don't like my current job. So,
Mhm.
what is the clarity here really important, or is it really feeling the feelings of what my new job would feel like I'm so much more in flow, or I'm so much more appreciated? Like, does that matter more than actually having that 100% clarity on what it is?
Clarity does matter.
Mm,
And that's because it gives your energy a direction to flow. So if
mm,
you say, well, I want a job, but I don't know what job that is, can you visualize it? Not
mm,
really, because I don't know what to visualize. And if you can't visualize it, then the subconscious mind has not even conceived it as a possibility, because the subconscious mind thinks in visuals and feelings. So both are important, the visual and the feeling. Now, if
mm,
you can visualize something, and it doesn't have to be 100%, it needs to be that desk in that room in that company, but all
mm,
of these become metaphors. So this
mm,
is the company that I see myself in, and I'm wearing this, red power suit, and this is the kind of job I'm doing, and then I'll be feeling comfortable and connected and powerful and resourceful. Now there's a picture, and in that picture, the subconscious mind has a direction to go in towards, and then the feelings can get generated, and then you let go of the attachment to that picture and let it show up the way it shows up. And it could be a very different company with a black power suit instead of a red one, and that's not going to matter, because it's going to give you that same feeling.
mm,
So part of manifestation is to have some clarity, enough to get your energies to flow in a certain direction, to paint some sort of a visual and to generate those feelings.
mm,
Otherwise, what you're going to be thinking about is more of what you don't want. All right. And it's like somebody coming to me and saying, well, you know what? I don't want social anxiety. I don't want to be scared of public speaking. I don't want to be alone. Well, what do you want? I don't know. But I don't want to keep overthinking, and I don't want to keep eating alone. And it's like me saying to them, don't think of a red chair, and don't think of a blue sweater, and don't think of a yellow bikini. But you can't do that, because that's all the mind is going to think about. We don't know how to not do that.
yeah, it's more like what a lot of people say, to focus on the solutions and not the problem. I mean, at least if any solution, like whatever solution there is, at least focus on the solution, because whatever you focus on expands, right?
Exactly, yes. And it gives you a direction to move towards. And who you are today is very often the future that you are moving into, that makes you feel the way that you're feeling right now. Unless you are practicing yogi, where the present and the future is all the same and it's all about awareness and it's all about just being. But that's also the future that you're going into. So that's why that's okay too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, is there anything you are currently wanting to manifest into your own life?
Yeah, I would love to scale my business and make room to get more hypnotherapists here because I train people to become hypnotherapists. So
Okay.
I'm looking to grow my team. I'm looking to make more of an impact here in Hong Kong and raise awareness on mental health.
Mm.
And I would love to do some more work with various different charities. And I've got people that I'm training who are doing internships and they're looking to practice on people. So if there are, people in Hong Kong that are needing support and not being able to support, I'm looking to collaborate with certain charities. I'm looking to expand our reach. I'm looking to get into more corporates and do mindfulness and different workshops so that the people who are working can understand different methods on managing their stress and anxiety and understanding the power of mind and the belief systems. So, yeah, I've got a direction where my energies are flowing.
Amazing, amazing. That's a lot of many different things, but that's all super exciting. Um, so I actually am also curious about like who you see yourself as outside of your work, outside of being a hypnotherapist and a life coach and the founder of your wellness center. Because I was speaking to another hormone health doctor before, and she also is very, very passionate about what she does, is helping a lot of people. But I think, especially in the modern age, when like there are so many, sometimes when we become our personal brands and we like our business becomes a part of us, it's so difficult to detach your own identity from what you are in your career and what you do. And so she was like, oh, now she realized it's healthy. It's not healthy to be that way. And she also really tries to focus on her identity as a daughter, as a friend, as an aunt. I just was curious, what other identities do you have that you associate with outside of being a hypnotherapist?
Yeah, and this is why even for me on my social media, I've started to post a little bit more about the other things that I do, like the boxing and the dancing and the going out with friends and being playful. So sometimes people get surprised that I have a real kind of silly, playful side to me. And
Yeah.
I love adventure and I love going out there, trying new things, meeting friends. I'm very close to my family, so being a daughter is important to me. Friendships are very important to me. Dancing, I love to do. I love moving my body. I love reading, and I'm a part of a book club. And my spiritual practices are kind of like in and out of work. That is very, very important to me too. So, my morning rituals, my meditation, my time with myself, and connecting with awareness. And more recently, I've been looking into non duality and understanding more about non duality, and expanding my growth. I do education every year. I make sure that I learn something new because I love it. Mostly, it is related to the work that I do because it's not just about work. It's a subject that is my favorite subject, which is understanding the mind, understanding psychology, and understanding spirituality. So last year, I finished a diploma on advanced inner child, which is a subject that I've been teaching for 10 years, but I wanted to just go into it deeper. Then I got a something on master trainer on developing a different curriculum, which also uses hypnotherapy. And now I'm learning about neuroscience. So I
Mm-hmm.
keep learning. I'm a student. That's another identity that I love to have. I'm a teacher, and I love being a student.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're all students. You don't have to be taking a specific course to be a student either. It's just a student of life as well. Like every single person we meet or every single scenario, circumstance teaches us something about ourselves.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think, yeah, it's definitely we're
And
all.
previously, I was similar to the person that you interviewed, where so much time was taken by work. And now I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to make sure that I do at least 2 holidays this year with my girlfriends. So that's all that's planned in the diary. I'm a very scheduled person because of work. So I schedule my sessions probably until December. My sessions are quite scheduled. And so I take blocks of time for myself. And so I know that in these blocks of times, I'm going to be traveling, or I'm going to be learning something different or something new, or I'm going to be discovering something, or I have family time. So, yeah, I've made a lot more space for that now.
Yeah, yeah, that's so important as well, I think. Um, and also, as you because you mentioned you're into spirituality as well, which is like the relationship between manifesting and spirituality, which I think is really interesting. Like with spirituality, sometimes it's more like people say go with the flow and like there are certain things that you're destined for, but manifestation sometimes it's not forceful, but it's like, oh, I want this specific thing. So how do you see those two things? How do they interrelate?
The if we're looking at manifestation as a formula, it is about knowing the direction that you want to go into. So, and let's use the word inspired instead of what I want. So, what am I inspired to do or to have? And I get clarity about what I'm inspired to have. I look at the roadmap of what it takes to get there, and I know the actions. I generate the feeling that I would feel once I'm there. So, I've already bridged the gap. I then let go of my attachment to the outcome, and then I allow it to come in the form that it needs to come. And so at the end, what we're reinforcing is that I am enough with or without it. And in spirituality, that's basically what it is, that I am enough with or without it. But if you're going into deep spirituality, you don't need the drama of the first bit. You don't even need to go into the direction of like, oh, let's imagine the partner, or let's imagine the business scaling, or let's imagine the body. You're already in the I'm present and I'm complete. And the way that I am now is great. So it's two different ways to get to a similar destination if we're practicing manifestation in this way. And every manifestation book or theory will say to you that the last piece is let go of attachment and know that you are enough, not only depending on the result, but also on the journey. So you don't have to get what you want or what you're inspired by in order to be enough. You are enough even now and even on the journey.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, that's also a really important reminder. I mean, but thank you for putting that in such a clear way. I've never actually heard anybody's explain it in that way before. So, we, I mean, we are coming to the end of the podcast, but I actually have a few questions that relates to the title of the podcast, Our Core Things, because I think that even though all my guests are different, have different backgrounds and careers, there are certain things that we all have, like our core things, including fears and certain things that give us a sense of peace. So then these are the two questions I wanted to ask you first, which is what do you fear, and then what gives you peace?
Hmm. My fear and the attachment that I'm still working on would be family. Um, I love family, and so the fear would be perhaps not having those members of family, and that would be inevitable in life, and that it'd be a lesson for me to work through. And what brings me peace is acceptance, which is my favorite word in the world. Like all the work that I do is about accepting the things that we cannot control. And acceptance leads to non judgment, and non judgment leads to self worth, because self worth has been destroyed by judgment, judging ourselves, not feeling good enough. So that's why what brings peace the most would be acceptance.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a great answer. That makes a lot of sense. Um, and what does sustainability mean to you?
So, sustainability for me is more about the self. It's about sustaining your self value and your self worth. But for so many of us, before we can even sustain it, we need to retain it. We need to get it back.
We need to build it up.
Because if we're talking about sustaining something that's already there, let's go back to birth. Okay, when we were born, we didn't even know the concept of not being good enough, because most of the time we just are and we're present. So it's going back to that. But the difference is, at that time we were not aware. So we had that self-worth, but we were not even aware of what is self-worth. And then it began to deteriorate and deteriorate and deteriorate. So now, with awareness, going back to the resources that we already had when we were conceived, which is that I do belong, I have value, I have worth, and to connect to those resources and to sustain them. That is sustainability for me. And I would love to facilitate myself and for others to get that.
I think that is really important, to be able to sustain that sense of worth and the sense of identity, because even if you find it and you can't sustain it, that in the long term can't help you either. So also, I also wanted to end with one piece of inspiration that you would want to share with the next guest, because I want to create that chain, like where I'll share something with the next guest that my previous guest has shared.
Something to share would be to use the power of acceptance to master your life. And using the power of acceptance is basically having discernment. There are certain things that are under our control and certain things that are not. And most of the time, stress is caused by wanting to control things that we can't control, like the outcome and other people's responses and reactions, and then losing control of the one thing that we have control over, which is myself. And so if we operate with more discernment, knowing what is not 100% under my control, knowing what is 100% under my control, being able to accept that, then that would lead to a lot more peace.
Yes, acceptance. In some ways, some people want to use manifestation to control things as well. So I think it's...
Yeah, and like the way that manifestation was linked to self-worth, it's like, well, why do you want something? Is it coming from a void, or is it coming from inspiration? So, and sometimes we want to manifest things that we don't even really want, but we're taught to want it. So I should want to have this kind of wardrobe. I should want to have this kind of body. I should want to have this kind of lifestyle. Well, do you? Sometimes people really don't. And so we spend all of our time manifesting something that you're really not inspired by yourself.
Yeah.
And so that whole thing is coming from a void. So there's so much to actually speak about in manifestation. Like, what is it that you want to move? What do you want to move towards? Why do you want to move towards it? What is it going to take to move towards it? Are you actually inspired to move towards it? And then if the answer is, well, yes, I am inspired, it's not coming from a should, it's coming from a place of inspiration. It is internally motivated, not externally motivated. So then that's one sign of, yes, this would be great for me to move towards. And then to use the formula that I shared earlier.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing such powerful insights and for sharing your own story as well. I think everything we talked about will resonate a lot with the audience, because these are all things that everybody faces, like issues of self-worth, difficulty accepting, letting go of control. These are all lessons that we're continuing to learn and need to learn how to sustain as well, right, within ourselves. I'm just very inspired by you and the work you do, and also the work you want to do in the future as well, with wanting to work with charities, wanting to offer your services to maybe people who can't access it. All of that is very inspiring, and I can't wait to hopefully work with you together in the future to elevate other people as well. So thank you so much for your time today, Sonia.
That would be lovely. I look forward to our future collaborations, and thank you so much for having me.